Aloha. Welcome to BearsWave.com podcast, coming to you from my 25th floor surf shack high above Waikiki Beach. Today we have our special guest, Larry Keating from New Zealand. Aloha, Larry.
Aloha, Bear. Great to be here.
And we have Naomi Fawn on microphone number 2.
Aloha.
And we have Shane Wozniak at the controls and here to keep us in line. So today we have kind of a cool show. It's kind of hard for us because we have a pro here who's a professional, did professional radio for many years in New Zealand, was kind of like the ABC Wide World of Sports producer type guy for New Zealand, done all kinds of film, all kinds of television, is a waterman, a sailor, and so we're here just trying to look like we know what we're doing. So how do you say aloha in Maori?
Haere mai.
Haere mai.
Haere mai.
Haere mai.
Haere mai. I like that.
Yeah, so Larry, welcome to Hawaii.
Thank you. Yeah, what a wonderful place to be.
So we were we've got to know each other about 12 years ago, and then again that's been that long, maybe 10 years ago, and now we've been here talking story for several days. We better get you on our podcast.
I know. I keep seeing you guys every time I walk down the beach or I'm about to paddle out. I see you guys palling around. I'm like, there goes the two coolest guys in Waikiki.
Yeah, we're doing a whole lot of nothing.
Well, like 12 years. So it seems like yesterday.
Yeah, and you're supposed to be retired. I heard you got a sailboat, and instead of parking it in New Zealand, you parked it in Croatia. You're supposed to be retired, but I know you're working on more projects.
Yeah, I'd sort of thought it was time for me to do something different and sell my business. And I'd been in the film and television business for 25 years. And worked all around the world. And I thought, because I owned this massive archive on the history of the America's Cup,
yeah,
and I'd been working with it for 20-odd years.
Wow.
Working with broadcasters and working with syndicates and sponsors and so forth, making television commercials, documentaries, everything you can imagine associated with an event. But I sold the business to an American corporation back in, it's 5.5 years ago now, and I thought, I'm going to just go and get on a boat. I would needed to build one first.
Yeah.
So in 2007, I built a boat up in Slovenia, in Begunia, which is 150 miles inland, and the Elan factory, which is famous for skiing.
Wow.
Elan skis, and they had a marine division, and they had an English guy by the name of Rob Humphreys who designed the most amazing hull.
Yeah, it's a beautiful boat. I've seen that.
And I wanted to buy that boat, so we got a brand new boat.
What's the name of the boat? I'm sorry.
It's an Elan Impression. It's 44 feet long.
But
and
what's
her
the name
name
of the boat?
What's her name? What's the name on the...
Chinano. And there's a great story behind that.
Yeah, okay, we want to hear it.
What's it mean?
Chinano, yeah. Which actually is an interesting word to use in that part of the world, because Italians and Croatians and Slovenians can get their tongue around that. It sounds like it's one of their words.
Yeah.
Right.
It actually is not one of their words, and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. I've never been able to find anything that it means apart from a cocktail that I created back in 1982 in Tahiti.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Ah.
could be Tahitian.
And we'd been sailing. We'd been at the Hobie 16 World Championships, and I represented New Zealand.
In the Hobie 16 class?
Yeah.
That must have been wild.
It was
fast. And
yeah, we never really figured we'd be that competitive at all. My bowman, or my crew, Dale Wrightson, and I figured, well, we're probably going to get knocked out early. So let's charter a boat. Let's charter a keel boat. And once we're knocked out, we'll go and cruise around Morea, Huahine, Raiatea, and go and do the Tahitian thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we started doing particularly well, and we're a bit concerned about the date that we were planning to take.
You were planning on losing.
So we said, what are we going to do here?
Uh-oh.
I mean, how serious are you, Dale? And he said, well, I want to go and do that cruise too.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided that we were going to run someone over, T-bone, and get thrown out of the event.
That's the way that's your way.
That's the way we did it.
Don't ever.
Disqualification.
And by T-boning them, did they get automatically advanced?
Yeah, we got thrown out of the event. It was a German. And,
then
we got thrown out of the event. So that was it. We went.
So this is how you show. This is the best thing the best plan you could come up with.
That was the best.
Was
thing.
to almost destroy your other.
We were doing so well. We were wild Kiwis.
I would suspect that of Aussies, but not these
yeah.
Kiwis.
It's a typically Australian idea. that we
Let's
adopted.
run over another boat so we can go drink some beer and stuff on a.
I want to see journal entries from that. Dear journal,
Yeah,
you've come
the
up with a
captain's
great
log.
plan today.
That's,
Well,
you
cut a
couldn't
long
think of a
story
better
short-
idea than that.
Well, yeah,
You could have sunk your boat or something.
I was young and crazy, you know. But I'm a little older and wiser now. I don't.
What
think
was
I'm-
their reaction as they saw you coming towards them and not looking like you were trying to avoid it?
I don't think they saw us coming.
And was there any fights later?
No.
You just took off. You had the boat.
It was a gentle tap.
Okay. Just enough to disqualify.
Yeah, we didn't.
And to take off their main mast.
Yeah, no, we were fine. It was in about 25 knots of wind too. So
But
it
you
was
used to race here, and there used to be a real special race you told me about here in the islands. You used to come for.
Yeah, and we used to come here for originally in the Clipper Cup back in the 70s, and then into the 80s that became the Kenwood Cup, which was a major international IOR series, serious sailing. From 19, 20 countries would come to one of 5 major events around the world,
Wow.
and this one here in Hawaii was always the best.
And these are big boats, weren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah. I mean, well, the biggest racing boats were the international maxi class. 85 feet long, 80
And
to 85.
is this maxi class?
The maxis.
And this is sloops still?
Yeah, they're all sloops, and down to about the 40 footers. But there were other classes outside IOR, which were lighter boats, a little faster and so on. But the waters and the wind here in Hawaii were amazing.
You were saying
you
the wind
tell-
off
yeah.
here, the wind just off the south shore here is supposed to be some of the best sailing in the world. You said.
Oh, the trade winds here blow, constantly, and when, Hawaii, you live here, you have the best winds, most
Yeah.
constant breeze in the world, and you live in these extraordinary waters that are deep water, big seas, very challenging. So it was always fantastic. And at the end of each of the series, which would go on for about 2 weeks, would be the around the state race. So we'd race these big boats right round the state. We'd leave here from Diamond Head, out
Wow.
around the back of the island, down to Niihau,
So
down
around all the
right
islands.
across the big island and up and so on. Yeah.
How long would that take?
Wow.
How many days?
Well, for the bigger boats like the maxis, like 2.5 to 3 days if the winds
Wow.
are good. Pretty quick.
Yeah.
And some of the boats might take a week.
Yeah.
Depends once again on the
Yeah.
wind. But you get caught inside the big island with the height of the volcano.
Mm-hmm.
You had a decision whether to go inshore during the night or stand offshore, well out about 60 miles off,
And
depending
really
on
get the wind.
Wow.
wind shadow.
Take the shortcut and
Yeah,
get dead
sometimes-
wind, or take the long way and get good wind. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah, so it just depended on what the winds were doing.
And speaking of
You
volcanoes,
know what? Actually, I have a question because I was just reading a article recently that they're saying that people that know how to sail by the stars, there's like five to 6 people left in the entire world that know how to do that. And I'm wondering, I mean, that's what I read. They're saying that
did
it's
Albert
a very...
Einstein say that on Facebook?
No, I actually
Okay.
read it about the Hokulea.
Yeah.
And they were
Oh,
talking
yeah,
about
in-
people that actually navigate by the stars
Yeah.
and only by the stars. Is that something that's just completely a dying art, or do you think there's some indigenous people that are still doing that and teaching others?
Well, you
it's something I'm
sailed
just really
you
curious
sailed
about.
on the Hokulea before it first made its first passage, right?
Yeah, I did. In fact,
Wow.
I
You and
saw
I
it.
Noah Thompson and
Yeah, and I
Eddie
saw it.
Aikau.
Yeah, exactly. It was just launched here, and I was here as a media guy,
Wow.
and so I did a media story, and they took me for a ride on the boat. We went right out into the Molokai Channel.
Wow.
It was amazing, and they were still really testing the rig to make sure that it was going to stay up. But it was a great experience, wonderful experience.
yeah,
And
I
how
read-
was that seeing, the local Hawaiians on that ship and sort of the excitement they had about making this amazing journey that they were going to make, the first journey?
Well, it was all about that, wasn't it? It was all about
Right.
how the indigenous people of all of the Pacific Islands came about.
Right.
Where did we all come from?
Right.
Where did the New Zealand Maori come from? Where did the Tahitians, where did the Tongans and Croatians, where did they come from?
Right.
And there have been so many stories from all of those island groups as to where they believed they'd come from.
Right.
And so even to this day, there's still an argument about whether the New Zealand Maori, for instance, migrated from Hawaii or
Right.
did they come down from Micronesia?
right.
And so some of the genealogy that they're starting to see today is suggesting that they came from Asia.
Wow.
So they challenged that, of course. So They're still working on it. Well, one of
Well,
those.
they had to come from Asia initially, probably. But yeah, there's a great book. I think Nainoa Thompson wrote it. The ancient art of Polynesian wayfinding, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal because they used stars, they used the ocean river current, they used the bending of the waves as they arced around islands, they used cloud formations above the mountains, they used the direction birds were flying, and they could navigate even on cloudy nights when there were no stars.
Sure.
You know, and when the southern hemisphere, there was no North Star that didn't move. You know,
It's getting back to what Form was asking, you know, and I think that it's quite true. It's a dying art.
Yeah.
But you know, there are groups of people who continue to understand it, teach it.
And here in Hawaii, especially.
But you know, with today's technologies of GPS, you know, it's definitely a dying art.
But on your
It's
boat,
not necessary, but I guess there's something very romantic and something that gives me a warm feeling thinking about people navigating by the stars.
Yeah.
That's just my romantic mentality, though.
Yeah, but it'd be handy to know too, because you know you can't rely on technology all the time.
GPS
Right,
can go
right.
down.
It can go down.
Well, it could be lost. Like we don't know how it could be lost. Like we don't know how the pyramids are built. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we gotta remember stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
about our history. You know, it's real important.
I remember when I used to sail in California, all I had to do was just make sure the compass was set at 32, and eventually I would hit land. But here, you can
Yeah.
miss land if you're off by a degree. You know, it's
Yeah.
open ocean wayfinding. It's an amazing, art. So I want to hear more about now volcanoes. You told me that you love to hang around live volcanoes in your boat.
Yeah, 2 years ago, we my boat's in Croatia, and 4 of us decided we would sail down the Adriatic about 400 miles into Greece, into the Ionian Islands of Greece, Skorpios and Ithaca and Catalonia, and then across about a 400-mile trek to Malta, and then up into Sicily, where the live volcano chain from Etna into Stromboli and Volcano all sort of link up with a fault that runs right through the middle of Italy.
Wow.
And Vesuvius, of course, is all part of that chain. And we sailed up through the, having got to Sicily and Siracusa at the, I guess, the southeastern corner of Sicily, most beautiful
Wow.
old Greek settled town from 3,000 years ago. And the artifacts and all of the settlements and the roads are still there. It's still got that wonderful feeling of stepping back in time. But on the way up the coast, you can see Mount Etna, and it's still very much alive. And it puffs and smokes away most of the time. But we then sailed north through the Messina Straits to Stromboli, which is this very conical, typical-looking conical volcano, which smokes and spews out ash and fiery rocks every
Fog.
two or 3
Fog.
minutes. Yeah.
Had that fog out there. Huh?
Well,
We just had a lot of fog here.
yeah, they're not. You don't see that too much. I mean, it's from there. You get fairly good winds in that part of the Tyrrhenian Sea, and so you don't. So it's quite high. So it's not as big as your Mauna Loa. But I'll just tell you a quick little story. We sailed out through Stromboli, down around past Panarea and 2 or 3 other little islands to an island called Volcano, which is the lowest and most active island in the group. And we dropped our anchor one night in this black volcanic bay, beautiful, clear, pristine water. The highest point in this island is about 200 feet, but it is definitely alive. And you can walk right to the crater edge and see all the activity. At about 6 o'clock this night, we were there with 6 or 7 other boats. They all up anchored and disappeared. Now, normally we would have Channel 16 on, and we didn't have it on. We were just sitting there swimming and enjoying a drink and a meal and what have you. And
Why would you need Channel 16 at that?
Yeah, we figured, no, this is great for us. We've got this.
There's
whole
no big
bay.
ships going to run over you. There's
Living
no
the
storm. The
dream.
weather looks good.
Yeah. Well, the plan was that the next morning at about 5, we were going to leave and head back to Messina. And I could smell at about 4 o'clock this very strong sulphurous smell, which is obviously coming off the mountain. And I figured, well, the wind has changed. That's what's happening here. And I got up, put my head out the door, and I could see all these lights all around this cliff, which is dead. I mean, it was pitch black and a glow in the sort of western sky. And I thought we'd turned around and thinking, well, it's about an hour away to sunrise, which would be in the east. And, what's going on here?
And did you tell me all the other boats kind of slipped away in the night?
They all got away.
And you're just like, oh, wonder where they're going. Just about a dozen boats slipped out of the bay, and you're by yourself, and think, oh, this is great.
Yeah, well, that happens, And so there's no concern. But as I started to see these little lights move, like fall, thinking, what is this stuff? So I got the crew up, my wife and this other couple, and Jeff said to me, that's a fire over there. Oh, really? Didn't see any vegetation or anything the day before.
It's just rocks. How can there be a fire?
So we had decided we'd pick up the pick and head off, and we did. We went around this point, which was only about 400 meters away, and the entire side of the island was erupting.
Wow.
And this glow in the glow in the western side was the eruptions.
Wow.
And so the whole mountain was going. We thought, hey, we should have been here for dinner last night.
What a sight to see, man. That's crazy.
Well, we photographed this thing, and we wouldn't have been more than 200 meters offshore, and it's exploding. There's big chunks going off all over the place. We figured this is what happens every night, every day. We should have been here last night for dinner. Well, what happens is we get back to Messina, and it's big news in the newspapers and on television for the first time in 24 years. Volcano erupted.
Wow.
And there was a massive earthquake the day before. And so that's why all these boats they'd been given the warning, you better get out of town.
Get away from that volcano.
The volcano was saying, hello, nice to see you.
when we have guests here, a lot of times we'll ask them about their most gnarliest surfing experience, like when they had their biggest wipeout or something like that. But I know that you've sailed around the world in races. I would like to know, and I know you've surfed waves since
since I was a kid.
I mean, surfed ocean waves on a boat.
Oh, yeah.
I want to hear your gnarliest moment at sea.
Thus far.
Yeah, I think 1989-90 Whitbread Round the World race. It was a classic round the world race, 4 stops from Britain to South Africa to New Zealand to Uruguay and South America and back to Southampton in England. And that was in the 70s and 80s. It was a really big event. And once again, there'd be 10 to 15 countries from all around the world be competing in big boats, big maxi yachts, 50, from 50 to 85 feet. I was on an Irish boat called NCB Island, and it was an interesting mix of crew. We had 26 on the crew, and from all over the world. We had Australians, we had Irish and Brits and Americans, and we were into the Southern Ocean. We were down below Kerguelen Island, and which is like 1,500 miles from land, apart from these little French islands. And we were steaming along, and I think I was mentioning yesterday, we would have these interesting experiences at night. Not only could we see the southern lights that they call, the Aurora Australis, which looks like you have a city just sitting over the horizon.
Yeah.
You can sit on the deck and you think if you crane your neck, you're going to see something.
Yeah.
But you're miles, hundreds of miles from the ice. And we would have these dolphins coming in at night. And because of the phosphorescence in the water would turn green.
Wow.
And normally they come in behind the boat, join the boat, get in the bow. And because of they just surf on the boat. And we'd have 45, 50 knots of wind, huge waves, massive big swells, they'd be a mile long.
Wow.
And there'd be as much green water in front of the boat as the length of the boat as there would be white water behind us at times, And we'd be on a 25-degree incline going down the face of these waves.
That feels like going straight down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's going down. But these torpedo-like images of these dolphins would come in at night, and they looked like torpedoes, and we would say, incoming! Look around, and you'd see all these streaks of phosphorus as these fish would just light the water up all around us.
Wow.
Like they turned on a neon light in the water.
You're talking about language
I know what you're
now.
talking about. I've seen it in Mexico when the waves crash.
Yeah.
It's magnificent, man.
During a red tide, huh?
So
In
what
Mexico.
happens is we're screaming down the face of this wave. We're in a Holland design boat. It wasn't never really designed to surf that well. It didn't have too many flat sections after the keel. And so we were still, you get up to a fair speed of about 22 knots, flying down the face of this wave with a big spinnaker roaring. And these dolphins are dolphining along the side of the boat
Pace.
around the bow as they come up for air. And we did this mad, crazy Chinese jibe, which is where the wind comes on the other side of the mainsail and slams the boat across to its opposite. And we literally did a big left-hand turn very quickly. And one of these dolphins was mid-air when this happened. And we know how sensitive they are and how very clever they are to avoid incidents. And it literally was mid-air as the boat went underneath it, and it went straight through the headsail, through the lifelines, smashed all our stanchions and the right in the bow of the boat, and fell off the other side of the boat. I would imagine critically injured. That would be the wildest thing that's ever happened to me.
Wow.
On a boat in the Southern Ocean, 800 miles from land.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's crazy.
And what about
Excuse me. So like, did it actually go through the boat? You're saying?
It went through the sail because it was mid-air. It can't control itself. And the boat literally did a left-hand turn underneath the fish.
And you're watching this dolphin go through the air.
It happened so fast, none of us really saw the impact.
Right.
We certainly felt it because it felt like it was going to rip the mast out.
I decided that the dolphin was fine.
I would hope it was. But
I just rewrote the story that the dolphin lived very happily ever after.
Yeah.
That's a magical story. I mean, that's the things that, dreams are made of. That sounds like a dream sequence to me.
Yeah.
And so many people that never have the chance to go out and experience, their outside reality of just living in the city or sort of everyday modern life. It must just be an amazing gift to be able to just get off the land like that and go out to places where, it's you and your crew. That just sounds magical to me.
A sailboat is magical. I talk about it in my book, I think in the second chapter, how the realization I had as I sat on the beach as a young man and I saw a boat going over the horizon, and I realized that a sailboat can go anywhere it wants to. I mean, you're not going to run out of fuel as long as you've got wind. And so when you have a sailboat, you've got a ticket to the world, But I want to hear about. I know when I ask people their gnarliest experiences, probably there's 100 things that come to your mind. What's it like to surf a mile-long wave on the open ocean? Tell me how that whole thing works. How when you're in the Southern Ocean, so you've got this big, massive following swell that goes from west to east, and you've got a following wind, so you have the spinnaker.
Exactly. So you've got the wind behind you. So most of the time you have the wind behind you, or you've got it on your beam. So the sensation of the power and the speed is only pretty much visual. Mm-hmm. You know what it's like when you have the wind in your face on a bike, or and then you turn the bike around and go the other way.
And there's no air moving. You feel like
the sensation changes, and so you get used to actually just flying along at a reasonable speed.
But you're on a wave,
and you're on a wave,
and you may ride that before. And of course, sometimes you probably go back over the crest. But how long is the longest you've ridden on a wave like that?
Well, as I said, that this particular boat wasn't really designed for surfing, so we never really rode a wave too long. We would get to the bottom of these things, and boats like Steinlager or Fisher and Paykel, which were far design boats, that were designed as lightweight ketches with big flat sections after the keel, would surf and sit on that wave for sometimes hours. Well, in our case, we would hit the bottom of the green water at the bottom, and it would cover the mast. We'd be underwater. Basically, you could just see the mast and the crew, and then like someone had thrown a bucket out the back of the boat, we would be dragged off the back of the boat, so we'd just slurp over the top, and then away we would go again. So, maybe a few minutes, not a long time. And it was hard on us, because it was hard on equipment on the boat too, because of the pressures that would be put on the mast.
You said there was at least one person lost every year in those races.
In the early years, there were a number of early deaths at sea.
Mainly overboard?
Gone overboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sea has no friends.
No, that's right.
When you're in the middle of the sea, you don't have a lot of
And
friends.
Have you been sailing since you were young? Is this something that you did with your family, or how did you sort of fall in love with sailing? I'm curious about that, or just the water in general.
Well, I grew up on a beach, pretty
Yeah.
much, in a place called Titahi Bay, just north of Wellington.
Which is the southern tip of the North Island, right, of New Zealand?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
that's right. We're the capital of New Zealanders, and so I grew up there, and I learned surf and sail as a young guy on little 7
I thought
foot.
it was the law in New Zealand. There's more boats per capita than any place in the world, isn't there, in New Zealand? Or at least I know in Auckland it's known for
Yeah,
that.
I mean the Australians say there are more sheep, but there are. And we're all- but that's true.
The dude, shh, I'll be here all week.
Yeah.
How about the channel between New Zealand and Australia? Is that a pretty gnarly channel?
The Tasman Sea is notoriously dangerous, and some of the most treacherous seas and winds in the world are there.
Wow.
Even though the Southern Ocean it's got these massive waves, by comparison to some of the storms in the Tasman Sea, it's
Wow.
they're puppies.
Well, I know, you talked with Peter Isaacson. You've been in touch with the producer of Clean Break, my TV series, and I guess he's flying out there in a couple of weeks. So we might be going out there in the year 2014 or something. And you have a home over there on the Coromandel at Whangamata, up above the
Yes,
water, the
we've
beach.
spent a bit of
You have a
Whangamata, yeah.
Whangamata, yeah. It's with a W though, right?
Yes, WH.
Yeah, I've surfed Raglan, tandem surfed Raglan, and then tandem surfed Whangamata. And I remember paddling out of Whangamata, and it's kind of like it's a bay and there's a little island out there, as I recall.
That's right, Clark Island.
Yeah, and then catching these waves, and it was so funny because here we are tandem surfing, and there's all these other surfers out. No one says hi, and no one no, nothing going on here.
Yeah.
There's no one tandem surfing here. And then we went up to that island that what did you call it? Hot water.
To a hot water beach.
Hot water beach.
Well,
Show me.
It's thermal. It's a thermal water that.
It's a jacuzzi.
Yeah, you can just dig your feet into the sand,
Oh,
and the
man.
hot water
Where
just
is
sort
it?
of bubbles up. The New Zealanders down here on the. That's it. Coming to. go
Well, yeah.
further north.
Over here.
We went to the.
Up there?
Yep. I was with my girlfriend at the time. We went to this beach to have kind of a romantic time because we were about to go compete. We were hopping over to Australia to compete in the world title over in Noosa. But we spent a few days in New Zealand, and that beach has this big sign, warning, strong currents. This huge sign, biggest warning sign I've ever seen. And it says
Flashing lights.
says no lifeguards on duty. And people were sitting in those they'd dig a hole in the sand and they would sit in those jacuzzis, and then the high tide would come in and take them out to sea. So I had someone screaming and yelling, and I paddled out and saved a little girl. By the time I get back, someone is screaming and yelling. There's Whangamata, screaming and yelling. I'm going out and saving the grandmother, and then I come back in and they're telling me to go save someone else. And by that time, the girl I'm with says, I think I told you this yesterday, she goes, I thought we came here to have a romantic date. And you're like, let them drown, we're supposed to be, And for me, I was kind of getting into it. To me, I thought it was like,
You're like flexing your muscles.
No,
like,
but I
check
thought it
this
was like
out.
a new
You're
sport. This is a blast.
Was she a Kiwi?
No, she wasn't a Kiwi.
I thought we came here for a romantic.
She was a
date.
high maintenance California girl.
Good on you.
Yeah.
You saved her life.
But Peter Isaacson and you, I think, are going to be long lost buddies, and I know that you're working on a project right now. I think he would love to have been a part of that. You're working on something with the
America's
I know
Cup.
you can't say too much about it because it's kind of behind the scenes.
But tell us what you can
tell us about the America's Cup project you're working on.
Yeah, well, I was telling you earlier that I'd sold my business and moved on and decided to retire. So I've had 6 years of sailing around the Mediterranean on my boat. And really last year I got a little tired of being retired. And so I accepted a challenge to come back and manage the very company that I sold. So I'm back with all of this archival footage and working with the history of the America's Cup, which is rich. The event's been around since 1851.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
In fact, it's the oldest sporting trophy in the world. And there's
Wow.
no other international trophy that's older than the America's Cup.
Didn't it used to almost like that? The America's Cup, though, for the longest time, just stayed in America.
For 132 years, the New York Yacht Club had
Which you're a member of.
which I'm a member of.
Why would they let a Kiwi join? You're like their arch enemy.
That's a good question. They must,
You're getting in
Keep
all
your
the
friends close and
people
your
often
enemies
say to me, "You
closer.
don't have a Kiwi accent." Maybe they think I'm from somewhere
You're a
else.
spy. You're a spy.
So yeah, I'm one of a few Kiwis that are a member, and honoured to be. But so I'm back working with the America's Cup, and with the event in San Francisco in September. Well, the trials start in July of 2013, just under a year away.
Wow.
We're busy making historical programs, just as support programs are made for golf or football, or if you want flashbacks of the
important.
past. That's basically what we're preparing, and I'm just working on a big project, a documentary on the history of the America's Cup.
Wow.
That has a very interesting angle to the whole yarn, which I'd love to tell you about, but if I did, I'd have to kill you.
But you're talking about
Again.
the behind the scenes maneuvering and maybe dirty tricks and stuff. How people
Yeah, well, the America's Cup
run
is,
into other boats like you
Started
did.
America's Cup on Wiki says 1851. That's when it started.
yeah,
That's
161 years ago.
Mm.
So yeah, well, I mean, the event it's unique in as much as that it has been really sorely sought after by extraordinarily wealthy people of very high profile all over the world for many, many years.
What's the cost of the normal investment a company's going to make if they're going to have a team, a boat, a team?
Well, like, you know, in 1983, it was something like about $3 million or $4 million.
It must be.
Today, they're talking $200 million to
Yeah.
have
Wow.
a successful challenge or defence. So it's sizable. But this next America's Cup is interesting because it's never been sailed in as an entire event, as a multinational event in catamarans ever before.
Yeah, so
Oh,
is it only
wow.
catamarans then?
Only catamarans.
And this
Wow.
started a couple years ago. They said, okay, and cats are going to go twice as fast as these other boats, or
Oh, more
how
than
fast?
twice. I mean,
how fast are they going to go?
well, these are 72 footers that they're going to sail the cup in, and they're already doing on foils between 48 and 50 mile an hour.
And how many crew are there? Is the crew smaller?
There's
or-
11 crew.
So it's a smaller crew than normal than in a. Is it the
No, well, of course, once again, it depended on the size of the boats.
Are they going to be up? Are they going to be flying like
Yeah,
on
sure.
one? What do you call it?
They're flying right now. That
They're not going to be going with two pontoons or whatever you call those things going this way. There's going to be one out of the water most of the time when you're going.
Pretty much,
when you're
yeah. I
going
mean,
upwind or?
yeah,
Wow.
pretty much, yeah. And in fact,
Wow.
they're not only both pontoons are out of the water at times on these foils.
Oh yeah, yeah. The hydrofoils that lift them up.
Yeah. So I mean,
Wow.
they're still working out as
That
to
sounds really amazing.
how to manage all of that. But it's going to be really interesting in San Francisco next year. I was there last week with the 45 footers, which are sort of a practice class in a sense that have been part of a global circus of events from Cascais, started off in Cascais in Portugal, then they went to Plymouth in England, they've been to Naples, Venice, San Diego.
Why did they make that move? Because they wanted to stay at the state of the art. Because I mean, were they going to become a dinosaur if they didn't? Someone else was going to do that class.
It's, you know, I don't really know the
You're the
answer to that. I think that it's because the America's Cup is sort of known as being an event that works with design at the edge of
Yeah. So this would be,
Space, as
they
it
would
were.
have to go this direction.
huge technological leaps
Yeah.
and ideas about design and all aspects of these boats. It goes back, I think you can go back to 1988 when New Zealand decided it was going to challenge the San Diego Yacht Club in a one-on-one match in a big boat.
Awesome.
Oh yeah. Yes.
And Dennis Connor's team from the San Diego Yacht Club replied with a big catamaran with a solid wing. And of course the catamaran against the monohull, there was no match.
Destroyed it.
So of course the Americans defended the cup successfully. Then in 2010 a similar thing happened. I won't get into why this happened, but in 2010 a similar thing happened, and Larry Ellison's Oracle Challenge decided it was going to have a crack at the Swiss who had the cup in a one-on-one challenge in multi-hulls. The Swiss built a catamaran, and Larry and his team, run by Russell Coutts, designed and built a massive trimaran with a huge solid wing sail.
Wow.
And cut a long story short, it went out
Yeah.
there in 2 races and just blitzed
Done.
it. And of course, they took the cup away from the Swiss, so now the cup is.
And the crew there would be like, they hardly needed much crew.
They were huge. It was huge. If you were standing next to that Oracle boat, BMW Oracle, it was called at the time, you couldn't see the top of the mast. It was over 200 feet tall.
Wow.
Just tall as our condo here almost.
So I think, as a result of all of that and the spectacle and the power and the potential to go fast, that they were looking for a new audience, and still are, that maybe try to convert petrol heads, people that are into NASCAR or Formula One racing.
Right.
Top Gear
They want
watchers.
fast and
To go,
they want fast and they want
Top
danger.
Gear.
Yeah,
enthusiasts.
exactly. And I think to a degree they're probably succeeding. There's a lot of people that have never been understood or been interested in the Cup that are starting to say, hey, we can't wait to see these things
Right.
go next year.
Right.
The unfortunate part about it is there's only 3 challenges, one from Sweden, one from Italy, and one from New
Because
Zealand.
it's just so expensive.
So expensive.
Yeah. I remember going to when I was there in New Zealand, I went to the America's Cup Village.
Yeah.
And the idea was I was going to arrive in time to watch the 5th and maybe the 6th race. The problem is with the Kiwis is they swept it in 4, right? You remember that year,
Yeah,
late
I do.
90s?
Yeah,
But you had a really cool captain. What was his name?
2000. Well, that was Russell Coutts.
And I remember this, that he had a chance, if he had raced in the 4th race, he would have broken all records for the number of wins by a captain.
That's right.
And he elected to...
Give it to Dean Barker.
Yeah, that's just a beautiful story, I think. Tell us about that story.
Well, I think the story really goes to. A whole series of things happened in 2000. That was the year of 2000. A number of things were happening. There was a very well-known New Zealander. I think he was probably as well-known in Europe and maybe here in the United States as he was a Kiwi. But his name was Sir Peter Blake. He was well-known for his racing around the world and his sort of passion for the oceans and ecology and.
Wasn't he known as very? I mean, he was a very noble person. He was very well respected, not just
He was, yeah.
not just a winning captain, but he was respected as who he was as a person.
So, like, what a good captain.
Like
It's
a Duka Hanamoku
what you want
of
for
the-
a
Yeah, he
captain.
was. Yeah, you could say that. He definitely was. And highly respected all over the world. Well, Peter decided that it was the end of his America's Cup. He had won the Cup back to New Zealand in 1995, defended it successfully in 2000, decided to move on and pass the mantle to others that wanted to pick it up. And Russell was one of them. And so I think, with it didn't happen that way for 2003 for the next event. Russell decided to, with a number of other Kiwis, leave New Zealand
Go to Prada, didn't they?
and went to the Swiss,
To the Swiss.
to the Alengi campaign, and there was a huge uproar in New
Oh, I
Zealand.
can imagine.
It wasn't good
It's
feeling.
like
around
June
it.
Jones leaving our football team.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, a little island like New
Was he
Zealand.
allowed back in New Zealand after that?
I think he is. For a while, there was a lot of,
I remember it was something like that. Wow.
Yeah, it wasn't good. But I think things have sorted themselves out now. But unfortunately, they won the Cup again and took it away from New Zealand. That was the unfortunate part.
Really, that guy can't come back to New Zealand.
That was tough.
It's just an island, you can't. People can find you.
Yeah.
I want to switch. I want to switch
Sounds like
directions
you're
a little bit because there's so
experiencing-
much about your life that I'm interested in, and we have such short time. I know. Okay, and beyond the sailing that you've done and the sailing that you've documented in film, you've also worked in surfing films. I think you're here right now to do a little bit of archival type stuff. But you've done some really cool work with Ozzy, Nat Young, and who was the other?
David Nueva.
And David Nueva, yeah.
And
You know
others.
his
Nat
you
Young
know,
is my
You know,
hero.
David Nueva's father was a gnarly martial artist.
No.
When I was in college and I was like getting into martial arts, which has kind of been our passion through our lives, I bought a book in this kind of lousy done martial arts books. Shows this guy fighting a bull and winning.
Wow.
David Nueva's father.
Wow.
His father is
Wow.
a world-renowned Hall of Fame martial artist.
What?
And then I remember the first time I competed against David Nueva was I think it was Huntington Beach Open. And I remember Corky Carroll was in the same heat.
Yes.
And I remember Nueva shows up and paddles out like after the horn sounds. Then he starts paddling out. He catches 3 waves and then goes in early. And I remember he did a fin first takeoff.
I remember this.
Yeah, but my kids know that from that moment on, I had to learn, and that's what I love to do. I love to drop in fin first and spin the board. Yeah, so I was basically
I totally
destroyed.
remember
I mean,
that.
he won the heat. He surfed probably 11 minutes out of a 20-minute heat, and
He was a delicate surfer. He could hang 5, 10.
And
he
both
was on
of
the
those
front
guys-
of the board more than he was ever.
and both of those guys are kind of tall for surfers. I mean,
Yeah.
Nat especially. They
Nat
have
Young
that kind of
is like
balance.
totally as far as style, one of my heroes.
Yeah.
Someone that I totally looked up to surfing growing up, watching him surf on old movies. I think, I don't know, he just,
Yeah,
his, the way he moves on a board
I think he's
is
so
just
tall
amazing.
too. You see it more maybe too.
Oh yeah. It was a great pleasure working with those.
What was that
two.
film?
It was part of a series called Les Grands Jeux du Sport, Great Sporting Jewels in French. So it was a co-production I was involved in. We did 56 one-hour documentaries on very high-end sports, and this was
Not
one
just
of them.
surfing, all kinds of.
All different sports, from Formula One racing to boxing with Muhammad Ali and Joe
Chess.
Frazier.
Just kidding.
We did do chess.
No, you did. Did you?
No, we didn't do
Oh,
chess. No,
good.
no.
Okay, good.
Oh, we did a
Because I remember they used to be in Sports
How about
Illustrated
underwater
chess.
ballet?
I was like, what is chess doing in
Yeah.
Sports Illustrated?
But
Synchronized
that was
swimming?
it was an interesting sort of angle on a duel. So we would take two protagonists in sport and set them up against one another.
Oh, wow.
And we went to Nat. I always wanted to do a story with Nat. And I got Nat and Bob McTavish, who was a well-known Australian.
And shaped your
love
daughter's new
Bob,
board, right?
love
Yeah,
Bob
he did
McTavish.
indeed. But I got them together for the first time in about 30 years
Wow.
to do this film. And we sort of...
When was this?
This is back in about 2002.
So recently.
Yeah.
By
10 years ago.
Yeah.
9-10 years ago.
To me, because
And
You're
we tripped
old.
around the world with Nat and David. And why I said to Nat, who was your greatest nemesis? And he said, definitely David Nueva in 1966 World Championships in San Diego. That was it. David was the American, he was the hot surfer that they all expected to win.
Right.
And Nat turns up and takes the title. And so there was a great story between the two of them and why Nat took the title. So I got them both together, and we came here to Hawaii. We went to California. We went back to San Diego, to Ocean Beach, where the World Tour in '66. We had all this fantastic footage that Greg McGilvray had of the movies and one or two other filmmakers. So we had this great story to tell. And working with them in their day-to-day lives now, diversely different. Nat, very successful, huge businessman, made a lot of money in property, still skis and surfs like a demon. And David, who's living basically in a truck in California. And it was a delight to work with them both. It was amazing. And
Was there a camaraderie between them, or I'm curious about how their interaction was?
Oh yeah, there was. Though I think, I think there was some sort of envy at one end of the scale to the other, and which led to a few precious moments during our filming. But that's all I can say there. But the film turned out really well. It won awards in Europe. So that was a great experience. And the other one I did was after having McTavish and Nat Young together for the first time in 30-odd years. I said to Bob McTavish, if you ever want to do your life story, because once I'd met the guy, he's just a gentleman. He's one of the most amazing gentlemen. He's a bit like Bear. He's got that same passion and love and respect
and good
spirituality.
looks.
No, you're way more good looking
Yes.
than he is. So I started to do another film, and it was eventually, and I directed and shot stuff here in Hawaii and in California and all around Australia, with Bob, with all the greats of yesteryear, Mickey Munoz and you name them. We got to
I'm
them
getting
all.
faint with all these names. All my
And,
heroes.
Yeah, because she's not just a surfer girl. She was raised up as a surfer girl, right?
Yeah.
Watching, go surf all day, watch surf movies all night. That's what we did.
Yeah. So we did this film. Unfortunately, I wasn't there in the cut of the film, but the film was finished. It's called Going Vertical. I would have cut it quite differently than the way it's
Well,
been
the
done.
thing about it, Larry, that's interesting about you is because, there's a lot of people I hang around with, and they all tell stories, and your eyes start to go like this, and you're like, okay. But you're a storyteller. and that's why you're a good filmmaker, because I love to listen to your stories. You know,
Yeah.
they all have an arc to them. I mean, when we talk story about what's, you know, things gone in our lives, you know, yours have this kind of arc and this denouement. You know, you're a great storyteller. So you're not just a great, to be a great filmmaker, and what's interesting about what you're doing is you're not doing necessarily scripted things. You're taking real things, but you still have to bring a script it as it goes on.
That's the wonderful thing about documentaries.
But you're a great storyteller.
Because you never quite know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you can go out with a concept and an idea, and you'll end up with something quite different.
Well, that's
depending
what
on
Shane brings that to the table
Yeah.
when we just do the videos that we do. He kind of guides it along as it's developing.
Yeah.
He'll begin to guide it because he can see where it wants to go.
Yeah, we'll
But he lets-
storyboard it, and it
but he lets
just
it-
becomes something totally different.
But they let it be what they want it to be.
Yeah. You know, it's like...
What it wants to be, I should say.
Yeah,
not-
it's always what it wants to be. You have
Yeah,
to let it.
it's amazing. And I get titles out of what something would say. Somebody
Right.
would say something.
yeah, and you're
So
like,
what are you going to
"That's
call
it."
this? I said, I don't know. Who knows? You never know. You
Right.
might just
Right.
a catchphrase or something that somebody says that has the meaning for the entire film.
Right.
Well, it's
Why-
kind of like when people say, "Oh, I've chosen the name for my baby already." It's like, sometimes, I don't know, my experience of being around young mothers, it's like sometimes you don't know what the baby's name is until you see the baby
Yeah.
birthed, and then it's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, he's not a Paul, he's a Charlie," you
Yeah.
know?
But so what
Yeah,
what
you
would
worry
you-
about the name later. Like when you write a movie, you don't.
I knew your
worry,
name.
You don't sit there and go, "What's the name of my movie?" first. No, you write it and then you.
You have a
name it.
working. What do you say to these young filmmakers here? We're doing podcasts, we're doing film. They're now involved in a project with some people in LA that are doing a documentary about me. Shane's worked a little bit on the Clean Break set, but we're kind of moving towards doing more production type stuff and maybe radio or at least more podcasts. And so you were saying that the technology is.
Well, that's what I mean. I as I said, I've been away for 5 years, really, away from it in a sense. Certainly, it wasn't at the coalface in production for nearly 5 years. So in 5 years, there was a massive shift in technology, not only in cameras and we're now recording on P2 cards. There's
Right.
no tape anymore. They've stopped
Right.
making film. Film's gone. I mean, there's nobody making any film. That's all finished.
Really? Is that right?
That's gone. So now it's mainly hard drives. And I think I was saying to you yesterday, you got to be careful with all of that though, because hard drives corrupt. They do fall down. We're shooting at the moment on this big job that we're doing, and it is a big budget program, and we've got Panasonic 3000s. So we've got P2,
You know those, Shane?
P2 cards. These are
Panasonic,
high
yeah.
definition. Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of look like when you look at them, they don't look like they're like something special.
Well,
They
that's
are-
right. They're
Yeah.
a very big camera.
And they're black, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big P2, the big Panasonic 3000s. But we with two cameras, so we have one on a Camtram and so on. But I think I was getting back to was
What I meant by that is they are special, but they don't appear to be special sometimes. Like some of my cameras, I've gotten into places just the way it looks, but it's
Yeah.
really not that. Like my older cameras, like my XL2.
yeah.
It wasn't really the best camera, but it looked good, So it's not about the look of the camera,
Yeah, well, it's full HD and it's as good as
Right,
it gets.
yeah.
Basically, they're making movies. With
What
it.
about
Planet
we're
Earth,
using these little GoPros now? Has your daughter used those on her? It's amazing the quality of the
These
picture
are
out of a
everything,
GoPro.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The stability is all digital. It's not like it's shock absorbing things. The stability of the image when you're surfing a wave or riding on a
Yeah.
motorcycle, it's not doing.
You don't even
It's
have
not
to put a
shaking
filter
like that.
through it. It's like perfect
Oh, I
lighting
know.
all the
But
time
you were
here.
saying the technology then in the editing room and the technology and how we're delivering it. Like this podcast goes out to iTunes and YouTube and people view it. I listen to it all over the world.
Yeah, well, all these little cameras are devised, essentially for motor racing. That's where it all started. They had to be
Right.
small so they could get them inside the cars, So
Right.
that whole technology's been developing for years, and now, of course, they're in handy cams that are as good as broadcast cameras.
It's crazy. It's
amazing.
absolutely crazy what
But
we're
it also
capable of
goes
doing.
for editing gear, and looking after it. So if you are recording on hard drives, you're going to have to dump it onto a tape eventually, a high definition tape.
Once you
to archive.
cut this stuff out and you've got your roll that you want to keep. Well, we got to bring this
I
thing
wonder
to a
how
close, you
YouTube
guys.
backs up all their information. I mean, they
I
must
know.
have,
I
like,
wonder about that too.
I do
3
too.
warehouses just stuff full.
Well, they have a whole warehouse just on you, Shane.
And it's crazy how it's free.
And I think the government has
It's
it.
free, and they have
The IRS is
hold
searching
on.
through it right now. But you guys, we got to bring this horse into the barn.
Well, I just want to say that I'm so thankful for people like you that are making documentaries about really important things like sailing, and especially surfing for me, because it's such a new culture in terms of technology and where surfboards have gone in the last 60 years. And I feel like people 300 years from now are going to look back at your documentaries and be so thankful that you captured people like Nat Young and McTavish and all of these really special characters. So thank you.
Well, it's an honor.
Thanks for coming and being on our
Yeah,
podcast
we got to do
today.
Pleasure's all mine.
We got to do our little commercial before we actually wrap it up. Shane,
Onnit.com, ONNIT.com. Go check out that website. Get Alpha Brain. Get your brain flowing.
and we got Gary at Surf News Network. Thanks, Gary. If you want to see where we're shooting from, go to Gary's website. They get like 27,000 hits a day at this website, surfnewsnetwork.com.
Surfnewsnetwork.com.
The Waikiki webcam
Check out
is from our
webcams.
house.
Look at surf reports.
What's
see
the
the
most
latest
important?
fashion.
The most important commercial is brought to you by my book, Deep in the Wave.
Deep in the Wave, brought to you.
Surfing Guide to the Soul.
You can get it on Audible. You can
By
listen to
Lou
it. You
Veronica.
can get it on any ebook.
With
Most
Lou
of your
Veronica.
bookstores.
Amazon.com. Check it out. Just remember that Christmas is going to be around the corner, so get it for a stocking stuffer for your kid or for your parent or for your grandparent or, I don't know,
For yourself.
your friend, maybe for
Because
yourself.
if you don't have any friends like me, then I have to buy my own Christmas presents.
And I can
That's not
recommend
true.
it. I can recommend it.
good.
I
We
had
had
it one day.
recognition.
I'd finished it the next. It was great.
That's
So-
awesome.
Is that film on iTunes or can they get
The Nat
that?
Young, I don't think so. It's still on the circuit in Europe, ESPN Classic Europe. I think about
And
third
what's
go
it
round.
named again so people can look it up?
Great Sporting Duels,
Okay.
as a duel, as in a fight, or Les Grands Jeux du Sport.
You have to read
We-
it in the French version.
And
I
you
like
can,
it very
if you
much.
look up Les Grands Jeux du Sport on Google it, and you'll see there'll be one of 56 one-hour documentaries that we did.
So we have Larry Keating here, a friend of ours from New Zealand, film producer, sailor, father, husband, and he's going to let me go sail with you in the Aegean Sea one of these days.
Adriatic.
Adriatic.
You'll be
Okay.
there. Good stuff.
Well, I might. You see, he's saying Adriatic, but he's actually going to be in the Aegean Sea. So
Well, don't forget,
Gotta get rid of
folks,
me.
if you have any comments or questions that you want for us, you can always email us at fawn@bearswave.com, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Thanks so much for being with us this week.
ahui ho,
Aloha.
aloha.
Aloha.